Hey, what's going on, guys? On today's video, I'm excited about this one. We're going to be discussing how one of my role models, Daryl Davis, has helped to transform or change the minds of over 200 KKK members in leaving that organization, and some of his processes and the way that he actually approached doing that and how that actually relates to cells. Let's jump into this training. All right, you guys. So first and foremost, I just want to be a big disclaimer that when it comes to somebody leaving an organization like the KKK and transforming their beliefs and their life is far, far, far more important than ever making a cell. As a student of the way that people think and why they come to certain conclusions, I've always been very, very personally interested in how did somebody come up with that decision, or how did they get to the place where this is the way of their thinking, especially when it's so foreign to my way of actually thinking. And so as I was diving into Daryl's trainings and listening to some of his talks, he's got a fantastic talk on TED Talk, started to really make me think about, how people change their mind and persuasion. And being in the high ticket sales space for 18 years, there was a ton to be able to learn that I was actually able to relate to my profession. Obviously, once again, nowhere near as important of making a sale or closing a deal as somebody changing the way that they believe, especially when it comes to that type of topic. But I thought I'd take the time to actually shoot this video and share with you some thoughts. Okay, so first and foremost, one of the things that I learned from Daryl was, number one, is that when you think about the way that the brain works and you're going into some sort of scenario and you're confronting somebody's thought process, or you're challenging somebody's thought process, the same thing that's actually happening in that person's mind is essentially the same thing that's happening 200 million years ago when, people were first on this earth and they were getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Their anxiety level goes up and they go into basically fight or flight mode as soon as they feel challenged or actually threatened. It's how our mind works. It's our biology. And so the first and foremost is Daryl never took that actual approach, never took to challenge somebody. So that was the first thing that I really learned, was that, the minute that you try to get into a situation where you are trying to challenge somebody's thought process, it is going to go the wrong direction. So never challenge somebody. But what Daryl did do is he sought for clarity. He asked a lot of questions. He wanted to understand the person. He sought to understand by asking additional questions, which allowed him to be able to get to the point where he could understand how that person got to that situation. And most likely, it sounded like from all of the things that I studied, was pretty much 10 out of 10 times it had something to do with the way that they were actually growing up. And it was generational type issues, at least from what I had actually seen in Daryl's trainings. So number one, don't go into any kind of sales scenario, especially when somebody has beliefs about a certain topic that that they need to change in order for them to move forward towards their goals, is that combating or challenging the way that they actually think will never get you anywhere. The second thing, number two, one of the things that I really picked up, and this is maybe my interpretation, is that one of the things that Daryl was very, very good at in listening to his conversations was that he aligned himself with the individual and the things that they had in common. Daryl, through his questions and meeting with these people, he would connect with the person and the things that they actually had in common. He would really focus on those things. As soon as you humanize yourself or you become aligned, especially with that topic, but as soon as, let's say, for instance, in the sales environment, let's say somebody has a different type of belief, or they don't believe something that they're going to have to believe in order for them to actually purchase. They're going to have to overcome some sort of hurdle, like, can I really be successful doing X, Y, and Z? The minute that you start to align yourself with the things that they do believe, the fact that they're going to realize that now you are on their side, that you're a part of their team, you're a part of their tribe, the conversation goes completely different. That was one of the things that Daryl, I picked up on, did very, very well. So he focused on the things that they had in common interest with one another, and it was one of the big ways that he was able to help people to change their thought process in getting out of that organization. The third point that Daryl had a lot to say about was you're never going to change somebody's perspective. This kind of goes with the first point as far as like challenging somebody. Realize that first and foremost, out of what Daryl was explaining is that you never seek to change somebody's perspective. They have their perspective for a reason. Whether they're right or whether they're wrong, it doesn't matter. It's actually their perspective. The angle that Daryl actually took was that rather than trying to force them to change their perspective, it's to give them an alternative perspective. Give them a better way of thinking. Give them a different way of thinking. So when it comes to marketing and sales, oftentimes, whether or not something does or doesn't work, a lot of the times it has to do with it's a different approach. It's a better approach. It's an alternative approach to why you hadn't been able to accomplish whatever you had that you were trying to accomplish previous. So once you kind of realize, hey, listen, I'm not going to try to change your perspective. Let me just give you some alternative ways of thinking. Now we're not challenging the prospect. Now we're not conflicting with the prospect. We're just giving them other better ways of aligning themselves to actually reaching their goals. And in Daryl's cases, better alternatives into a better lifestyle, a better way of thinking, and a better way of living. The fourth thing that I want to talk about is never actually arguing with an individual. Now, here's something that I found like really, really amazing. And part of the reason why Daryl is one of my heroes. Here's an African-American man whose mission in life is to help people. And he's helped over 200 people that are in the KKK transition out of that organization. Here's an African-American that most likely had been persecuted. He had been probably got called every name of the book and yet never argued with them. Never fought them, never tried to combat their way of actually thinking. To me, it's just one of the most amazing things about Daryl as an individual from my perspective. I've never met the man, but it goes in a line when it comes to the actual sales process, because oftentimes I'll see egotistical sales reps that will have conversations and get frustrated with people if they're not kind of aligning with their way of actually thinking, and it'll sometimes become frustrated or argumentative. As soon as that happens, all trust basically crumbles. Egos flare, aggression flares, and you'll never get a deal done inside of that environment. I think that Daryl understood this factor. And so because he came from a place of really trying to serve people and help people, he'd never argue, he'd never fight, he'd never quarrel. He just came from a place of, hey, I want to give you a different perspective, which is super amazing. The last thing that I want to discuss, number 5 here, the thing that I picked up from Daryl was also his willingness to be vulnerable. He was willing to talk to people about, his own things that he had to overcome. He was willing to share personal stories. I think that this is really, really a powerful component when it comes to helping somebody change the way that they actually think. And from a power of persuasion standpoint, as soon as you're willing to become vulnerable and share some of your failures and how you overcame it, one, it gives credibility to you as an individual. It gives credibility to the fact that you understand how to help them to overcome the problems that you have or that they have because you've been there and actually done it themselves. I know this is kind of a weird topic, you guys, or a different topic, certainly one way more important than obviously sales, but I'm fascinated with the way that people think and the way that people come to certain conclusions. Daryl Davis, what an amazing story when it comes to really helping people to change their mind and persuade. I look at our role here as inside of the sales space, especially when it comes to personal development space, seeing people change generational type habits or change the situation that they're in. To me, it's a real calling. It's a real mission. And being able to be a part of that in any kind of sales environment, you're definitely a lucky individual. Anyway, you guys, if you have any questions on these topics, please comment below. As always, follow us here for more content, and we look forward to chatting with you soon. Cheers, guys.